You really painted a great picture of me there. Well, I just got home from 9 days in Japan. I got home yesterday. Yes, some of you understand how I'm feeling. Here's the problem. I got to Japan, I felt perfect, no jet lag. And then I started worrying. I said, oh no, the back end of this trip is going to be really bad. So I got off the plane, and I'm out of my mind. I'm just warning you, I'm completely out of my mind. I woke up this morning, and I had it all together. I went to brunch with my wife. I got a haircut. I was like, I am living my life. And then I had this kind of prepped. I started putting it together, and I just started feeling crazy. So on the way here, I missed my exit. I accidentally went to a Celebrate Recovery meeting. I'm not joking. I am not joking. I went to the wrong building, and I walked in, and I'm just like, and I look, and I was like, I tried to ask Justin. I was like, how many people signed up? This is exciting. And Justin says things like, just a few people. And I walk in, and there's like 8 people, and they're playing a track. And so in my mind, I'm expecting Jay Thomas. I'm like, where's my wife? And I'm looking around, and this lady comes up and taps me on the shoulder. She goes, I think you're looking for the Legacy Conference. It's in the other building. So this is where my head is. You're getting a jet-lagged Joshua Heath Scott, which has never been seen before in public, so congratulations. Okay, I'm excited to be here. I rarely talk at things like this. I tend to talk about creativity, inventions, and things in a more, I hate the word, but secular format. And so this is always really exciting to me because I have such a background in ministry. And it's rare that the two worlds collide, and so it's a really special moment for me to be here. And again, Justin is just the truest of truest people I've ever seen. And so, yeah, I just want to say thanks to him. Everyone give Justin a hand. It takes a lot of courage to do these kind of things. A lot of people talk about, this is lesson number 1, not in my notes. A lot of people talk about doing stuff, very few do things. That's the number 1 issue with creativity. This is a TED Talk rant. If you say you're a creative and never do anything, you're actually not a creative, you're just a thinker. And there's a big distinguishing factor in that. So you need to start doing things. And when you start doing things, you're practicing in front of people. And Justin's just practicing here in front of you. And one day this conference will have several thousand people and be exactly what he's always felt inside of him. And that's just a good lesson. Justin he's exemplifying practicing in front of people. Too many creatives are scared of that because they're insecure, and I'll get to that later. And now I'll actually start my message. Okay. So I'm just excited to be here. The jet lag is inside of me, and I'm just going to go for it. So, yeah. So let me start off with a story. In 1860, you didn't see that coming. In 1860, Robert Burke and William Wills made the first expedition across the central interior of Australia. So if you're not aware, in 1860, Australia's the interior is a wasteland. It's where you go to die, basically. And so these 2 British explorers, they go and they make a trek across that interior, and it's a straight line and it's an out and back is what it's called. So they get out and they need to come back. Well, on the way back, they run out of food, and they find themselves stranded at a stream. And at this stream, they're pack camels, because there are no cars. They have camels that are carrying all the water and things. Those camels actually die of starvation. And because of this, now they're not only facing stranded with no food, they're stranded with no possibility of gathering enough water to make it through the desert, which stands in front of their return. So they are quite literally up the creek. It's a very, very bad situation. William Wills kept a detailed journal, and he wrote in the journal, "We have been unable to leave the creek. Both camels are dead, and we are completely out of food. We are trying to live the best way we can, like the natives, but we find it hard." And he was speaking of a tribe. It's the Yandranwanda people. They were thriving in the wasteland. So he writes about this in his journal. He sees this tribe, and they're in this complete and utter wasteland, and the tribe is thriving. And so they take note of this. They're literally starving. And so they manage to have a friendly encounter. They go and encounter the tribe, and this tribe reaches out in kindness and hands them these cakes made from crushed seed. There's this clover type thing that grows, and they would take the seeds from this, and they'd crush it up. It's called nardu. And they would make I'm picturing them as little rice cakes or something. I don't really know what they look like, but they would give these two explorers, and this was sustaining them. And at this point, they go, okay, we might not starve. But at some point, Robert, who was apparently very feisty, he had an argument with the tribe, held his pistol up in the air and fired it, and scared away the tribe, and they never talked to him again. Anyone know someone like this? You know exactly who they are. They're probably sitting next to you. It's the person that's like, dude, we're doing so good. And why? Why did you even have a gun? Anyway, so at this point, they have lost access to their only provision. They again face starvation. Not a great situation here. So they decide, which I think I would do too, they decide, hey, let's find the seed, the nardu, and let's make our own cakes. Right? Is that what you would do? Yeah, that's what you would do. So everything seems fine at first. Well, in the journal, William now writes, the cake satisfied our appetite, but we feel extremely weak. Kind of like how I feel right now with jet lag. So the appetite is done away with, but they don't quite feel right. They feel extremely weak. Then he writes, and I need to do a disclaimer here. I have to talk about poop. I warned Justin about this. And if my youngest son was here, he would love this moment. So let's just get it out in the air. To tell the story properly, I have to talk about poop, and everyone in here poops, and let's just say it all together. Everybody say poop. Poop. Okay, good. Let's move on. I know, I understand, it's not your typical thing. But here's what he writes. It will not agree with me in any way. This is 1860s language for my tummy hurt real bad. And then he says this, the stools it causes are enormous. Okay, you're laughing, just wait. Within 1 week of that entry, William and Robert were both dead. See, you laughed too early. Safely preparing this clover seed is actually an incredibly challenging task that this tribe had perfected. A whole other lesson here I'd love to teach, but I don't have time. They had to prepare this seed over generations, trial and error. You ever wonder, I had this conversation the other day, who tried out mushrooms? Right? This lady has her hand up. All right. Let's talk later. We need to get her name. She's a good time. All right, this is a complex thing to prepare it, and so it's packed with an enzyme. I'm going to attempt to say. I failed school horribly. I'll talk about that later too. Theaminasa? Sure. Theaminasa breaks down all your vitamin B in your body, and it actually takes hold of every nutrient in you and strips it out. So when we talked about poop and you laughed and then they died, this is actually what happened. They were consuming the cake they made. They felt full, but they starved. There was this illusion of being full. It was stripping out every nutrient in their body. Historian and one of my favorite writers ever, Tim Harford, says it this way. Burke and Wills were full but starving. This is 2023. The world is full of scrolling content. Endless screens, endless clicks, endless icons, endless ways to spend 5 hours and not know it. The world is full but starving. All around us, people spend countless hours on endless amounts of content, but they are actually starving for God-breathed creativity, and they do not know it. So, just some stats, because I'm a stat person. You shared an interesting stat. I have a different, and by the way, Philip, you're amazing. It's so good to see you. You can paint while I talk. Is that distracting? I love Philip. Current studies show when we talk about just social media, take one social media app that's popular amongst a group of people, people consume 1 hour per day. That is an average. I believe it's higher than that, but let's say 1 hour per day. This doesn't include streaming services. So let's do the math to 50 years. I'll walk you through it. 7 hours per week. So you scroll mindlessly for 7 hours. You could read a book. You could learn a skill, but you find yourself scrolling mindlessly for 7 hours. This happens to everyone in the room, including me. Let's keep going. 30 hours per month. I own a company with 35 employees, and if I hire a 30-hour employee, that's considered a full-time job. Full-time job scrolling. And we wonder why we're not doing the thing we're supposed to do. Ugh. This is 365 hours per year. Can you just imagine what you can do if somebody handed you 365 hours of free time? The truth is you have it. You just keep throwing it down the toilet. And the world keeps doing this. 18,250 hours over 50 years. I picked 50 years thinking someone lives to 70, maybe they start caring at 20, I don't know. But that's 3.5 waking years, not your sleep. Waking years of your life, consuming, scrolling, feeding on content that is making you visually stimulated and full, but causing you to starve. 3.5 years. So church, we have a problem. How do we steal back the imagination of a generation that is starving but full? How do we do that? So that's what I want to talk about tonight. And I'm not here to demonize content. I want to be super clear. In fact, I probably make more than anyone in here. I have a staff of 5 that makes content all day long. I have a YouTube show with a staff of 2, 3. I'm not demonizing content, but I am pointing to the fact that content alone is poisonous. It is the equivalent of Nardu. Poisons the creator from doing what they're created to do, and it poisons the partaker from the inside. It's deceiving on both ends. Causes you to waste your time and not create, and causes the person who's longing for deep creative things from the heart of God to scroll mindlessly. It is the biggest poison of our time. Content creation has become the time-sucking enemy of creators and the cause of malnutrition in those looking for true expression. So how do we tap into God-breathed creativity? What does it look like? In a world that's numb, filled with disposable content, how do we create? This is what I want to get at. Lasting, impactful art. Something that lasts through the generations. How long does your TikTok moment last? Or my Instagram post? About 10 seconds. And it's never remembered. But what if we're called to make things that last 100 years or 200 years? Is that what we're called to do? I think it is, and I think that's at the heart of the problem. So, how do we impact the heart? So I just want to pray for a second. Jesus, I ask you in this room to give individual revelation. This is such a broad topic, and everyone has a different place in this topic, Lord. And I don't claim to know everything, and I have my own issues. But I believe that your Spirit is here, that you want to speak to us. And it's such an honor to be in front of creatives who are desiring to create. And I pray right now that you touch their heart with something that is everlasting. Right now, in the way that each person needs to be talked to, I trust and I know that your Spirit will do that tonight. So just guide and direct us all together in your name. Amen. So my wife, she's awesome. Raise your hand. She's the better part of me. Just give her a hand if you know her. She's so good. She made me do this next part. I hate talking about myself, but I want to set up some context. I have obsessively created things for 25 years. And not until the last 2 or 3 years have I really understood myself in that capacity. Is there anyone that can relate to that? Like you just make things and you've always had these obsessions, and then it clicked with me just a few years ago. I'm 40 now, I'm ancient, and it really did click. But I have this, I'm understanding this capacity and the relationship between my creativity and my faith. And it's a really beautiful thing. I picked up guitar at 15. I grew up in a small Alabama farm town where I knew I would be trapped and never do anything. And I got a hold of a guitar, and I knew guitar was my way out, and it was my way out. Guitar quite literally saved me. Everyone in my class has less than desirable outcomes, and where I'm from. And so guitar really did save me. And it took me places that I never thought I would go. And so that just started with bands, touring, and I was determined to be something. I barely graduated high school. I'm a horrible school learner, a really bad student, but I'm a good learner. So I always had this conflict of fitting in, I had one semester of community college that was so embarrassing I dropped out. And at 19 years old, I had a radical encounter with Jesus. And I immediately had this friction. I'll speak candidly. I traded in Radiohead for like weird CCM music. Anyone relate? Like I had this moment where, oh man, this hurts a little. Right, I was struggling with that. And so I've had this balance of creativity and awe-inspiring things and how faith aligns with that and the expectation the Western church has put on art and the way people feel about things. And I've always struggled with that. And so, I've done a lot of things though. This is where my wife, she's like, you need to tell them what you've done. So it's a little bit of a funny list, but I've been a pastor. I've been a worship leader for a long, long time. A songwriter, a producer, an audio engineer, a touring guitarist, a recording artist, a circuit designer, a YouTube personality, social media content creator. I'm a published writer, I'm a photographer, and I'm a journalist. And I feel crazy like all the time. The trip to Japan is this project I've worked on since 2017 where I'm traveling all over the world, interviewing inventors before they die and telling their stories of how things were created. And I'm just obsessed with creativity. And so I'm most known as Justin said, the owner of JHS Pedals. And now you know that a guitar pedal, thanks to Justin, is a box that makes noise. You've been fully educated. So I started JHS 15 years ago, and I think we had $25 in a checking account, possibly negative 25. And I knew nothing about business. Both of my parents never graduated high school. They dropped out because large families and providing for single parents. And I don't have the life where I could go up to my dad and talk about, 403c1 or whatever numbers are. Like I never got to talk about taxes or, hey, what's a good business strategy? I had none of that. And I was really ignorant, but I committed to being a learner and not a complainer. So part of this talk to you tonight is just to be transparent and share from my experiences these lessons I've learned between the tension of creativity and my faith. There's a quote that Tozer said. He said, "The essence of art is self-expression. The essence of Christianity is self-denial. Mixing the two is extremely difficult." That has been my entire waking life. The moment I came to Christ radically, I felt the most exhausting tension. I felt it for 20 years. I have literally felt that tension for 20 years. I'm supposed to self-express and create, and I'm supposed to be humble and not be seen. How in the crap does that work? And so I think a lot of you feel that. And so that's what I want to do. I'm a nerd, and so my warning is I'm very practical, I'm jet lagged, and I have 5 points. Are y'all good with that? Drink some water. All right. It's always awkward, people watching you drink water. Like, am I doing it right? I don't know. All right, if you're a note taker, which you should be, getting on to you, the teacher wants you to take notes. Creativity, number one, creativity does not have to explain itself or be seen. 2023 hates this. Creativity does not have to explain a single thing, and it does not have to be seen. This is so at odds, it's a war. This is literally a war of concept here. Genesis 1:1-3. Everyone knows it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God starts everything off in verse 1 and chooses to not explain a single thing. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Where did God come from? He doesn't care to tell you. Why is he creating a thing? None of your business. I love this part. And when you get into chapter 1, it's so full of mysteries, but have you ever noticed he just clearly says the earth was without form before the 7 days? So there was an earth before creation? No explanation. God is not interested in explaining himself as a creative, and therefore, why should we? But yet we walk around and want to explain our motives and, hey, I hope this is okay. This is the number one problem with Western Christianity. Approval of people to create a thing that God has put in you to create. It is an instant failure. He never explained himself. Every kid, I was a youth pastor for a while too. Forgot to put that in there. That was the good old days. Any youth pastors up in here? Amen. Every kid, I had so many atheists. They came to me like moths to a lantern. I don't know what it was. I had atheists coming out of the woodwork. And they'd all say, well, who made God? I don't know. He never cared to explain it. He does not care. He just creates and moves on, and so should you. So you do not need any permission. God felt like creating. He created. That's what you should model. He got 0 likes on his channel for that. Not a single subscriber. It's such a shame. He was like, hey, I'm going to make this thing. And then he pulled up Google AdSense. And he was like, oh, man, they ain't running any ads. I'm not getting any of my money. Right? True creativity does not need the approval of man because it is not motivated by what man wants. It is motivated by the need to create as God created. I'll read it again. True creativity does not need the approval of man because it is not motivated by what man wants. It is motivated by the need to create just as God created. Too many of us are motivated to create for other people. We are to create for that feeling in us. I love the text. He gives us the desires of our heart. I grew up as a Christian early, kind of hanging in that crowd that's like naming, claiming airplanes and stuff. You know what I'm talking about. And they would use that verse, God, I got a jet in my heart. God's going to give it to me, right? That verse to me is really sacred because it's speaking that the thing in our heart, God gave it to us. That intention that you feel, that idea that you have is the desire in your heart. God gave you the desire. He's not interested in you having a jet, whatever. You can have a jet. He's giving you a desire to create. If you are waiting on an audience to make something, you're creating for the wrong reasons. So true creativity is at war with a content mentality. True creativity, listen to me, does not need a single like. I would actually say some of the best creativity, it's a good thing it doesn't get a single like. Art is supposed to move and shake things. God moves and shakes things. Hebrews, he shakes everything that can be shaken. That's art. God's very power in the age to come, it's a shaking. It's a creative, everything he does is creativity. And everything he does moves something. Be still and know he is God. He doesn't need likes, and we should model that. So content, last on this point. Content should be the byproduct of creativity and not the product. There's a saying in business. I learned this from Sean. Thank you, Sean. Or I learned it in some surrounding where you are. I don't know. There's a term, sell your sawdust. And it means a lot of people in business don't realize they have a valuable product that's just being wasted. So quite literally, in old timber yards, they'd be cutting trees, and there's all this sawdust, and they didn't realize you can make stuff with sawdust, but then it turned into its own business, right? So sell your sawdust. So a lot of you in business, you may have $1 million ideas that you don't even realize are money-making ideas. And so content should be the sawdust, not the product. So make your creative thing, and then feed the content. But if you put content first, you are automatically searching for likes, and you are automatically out of the model that God set in Genesis 1. I'm going to drink water awkwardly again. Okay. I really did walk into a Celebrate Recovery meeting. I cannot get over it. It's not my finest hour. All right, number 2, note takers. Who's taking notes? Awesome. Your creativity is how God moves creation forward. Your creativity is how God actually moves all of creation forward. We know verses like, pray and hasten the day of the coming of the Lord. We know that stuff, but it's actually, you can take it way down further. We need to make things because he uses us to move things forward. So this is going to get real nerdy, and I enjoy this more than anything, and I'm just going to lay it out for you. You've been taught your entire life a lie about invention. There are no light bulb moments. The light bulb thing comes from Edison created a light bulb, and so, a light bulb idea. Everybody knows that? So this isn't real. Let me break it down for you. Things are not invented. They actually evolve. Now, before you pull out your pitchforks and see me preaching Darwinism, not what I'm doing. Evolution is a term that is useful. I'm not talking about, monkeys to men. I'm saying things are not invented. They actually evolve. So let's look back at Genesis 1. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This word "let" is really interesting because it's a continuing moment in the Hebrew language. And it's actually translated almost like pie, when you write out pie. So it's actually let, and it never stops. It's a continuing word. And that's why the sun still shines. Let there be light, and he never said stop, so there's light. Let. Do you understand that? So creativity is a continual action and process, not a single moment. Too many creatives buy this lie that you have a light bulb moment and you're having this epiphany and you're under an apple tree and it hits you and you create gravity or something. This is not how any of it happens. Those stories are really fun. They might be partially true, but no single geniuses exist in the form that you have been taught. Let me break down a couple things. There is a term I want to teach you, and I warned you this would get nerdy. I want you to say this term, adjacent possible. Let's do it one more time, adjacent possible. So in 2002, a biologist named Stuart Kaufman coined the term the adjacent possible. And let me define it for you because you're going to love this. I promise you are, and it will be extremely freeing if you hang with me. The adjacent possible is the reality that we see our next step or creative idea in the possibilities around us. This will make sense in a moment. Just hang with me. The reality that we see our next possible move in the environment we're in. You ever get around someone and your ideas start working? This is a form of the adjacent possible. Do you have a favorite person you love to create with? Because it just flows. Who has that? This is the adjacent possible in a human form. There's another way to look at it. When we get near an adjacent new possibility or idea, we see a new possibility for ourselves. So let's break this down. I warned you. You ready to be nerds here? In the first century, Romans created a thing called the screw press, and they would screw down, it's a clamp, okay? Just go to Lowe's and get a clamp. They call it a screw press. We'll call it a clamp, whatever, tomato. They made wine and olive oil with it. So this clamp would screw, and it would go down, and they created that in the first century. In 1440, Gutenberg adapts the screw press and makes the printing press. He saw his whole life this screw press, and he has this epiphany of his adjacent possible. I could use that for this. So he invents the printing press. How many of you know the printing press is probably the most important technological invention ever made? As a creative, you should know that. You should go study the printing press and let it just blow your mind. Everything it caused is insane. Let's keep going, though. In 1452, I love how old this is. New stuff is so boring. 1452, eyeglasses are perfected because the printing press finally had people reading and they realized they couldn't see. So we go from a screw press, we see that idea, we end up with the printing press. Now people are reading and going, wow, this eye thing is really hard. Now we have to have eyeglasses. The adjacent possible is moving on. You can't have eyeglasses until you've had the screw press or the printing press. Do you track with me? Then in 1585, we have the microscope using the adaptation of eyeglasses. Then in 1601, we have the telescope, which is adapting eyeglasses and the microscope technology further. Then in 1822, we have photography because telephoto lens are just adapted eyeglasses, microscopes, and telescopes. It's a way of capturing light onto film. In 1961, a Soviet cosmonaut is the first person to go to space for 108 minutes, orbits around the Earth because we use telescopes and photography to study. And then it all ends in 1969. It doesn't really end ever. We land on the moon. We don't get to the moon unless first century people are crushing wine. You are currently surrounded by the possibilities that you need to create. You need to see them. Everything you're looking for is in the people and things around you. Your creativity is moving things forward, literally, for the world. You might make a thing and think no one sees it. Philip, you might paint a painting and go, nobody sees this. That might be the painting the next painter sees. And that painting is seen by this person. And you understand. You are creating for a bigger picture. Another one is 1752, Ben Franklin flies a kite. 1880, Edison and Tesla fight over a perfect light bulb using that knowledge. 1906, the vacuum tube is invented. 1926, NBC launches the first radio using that vacuum tube. 47 is the transistor, 59 is the macro chip, 71 is the personal computer, 83 is the internet, 93 is the smartphone, and right now you have a supercomputer in your pocket because Ben Franklin flew a kite. The adjacent possible is the thing that God uses to move the entire world forward in knowledge and creativity, and that's why you need to create. That is the biggest motivation to make something. Who cares if anyone sees it? Who cares if you get a subscriber? You are literally a tool in God's bat belt, and you are moving society and creativity forward. It doesn't matter if you are seen. We are constantly adding on to this adjacent possibility. You are not the end all. This is a trap for us as believers, as creatives. Nobody liked my song. It's all about me. So you don't have to be a hero. You just need to make stuff. I think one of the problems, I have lots of problems. One of the problems is that Christian, Western culture, we're so hung up on trying to make the big movie that competes with Marvel or something. I don't know what's going on in people's heads. Just make stuff. Just make the thing that's actually in you, not the thing that you're worried about making because you want to be liked. If you would quit doing the thing to get you liked and do the thing that's in you that feels crazy, that's where the breakthrough happens for the church. That is where the imagination of people come back. Your creations are a piece of God's bigger story, a step forward that others will move on to. And this removes some pressure. How many feel pressure as a creative to do the next big thing? This removes it. It's not about you. It's about you as a possibility in God's timeline. God's timeline is bigger than me. It's bigger than you. Just make stuff. Say, just make stuff. One more quick. 1500, the pencil's invented. 1770s, the eraser. Some of you will create a pencil. Some of you will create an eraser, but God needs both, and it might take 270 years to be cool. Please hear what I'm saying. Someone made an eraser and didn't have a pencil. Someone made a pencil and couldn't erase. But they made it. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Just make the stupid pencil. Just make the eraser. Who cares if it's a number one eraser? Who cares if you get AdSense from Google? Number 3. Are we good? Justin, do I still have 4 hours like you promised? Okay. Number 3, write it down. We are creating within a greater creation. We are creating within a greater creation. This is a fun little moment. God created creativity. You ever think of this? God created creativity. That is really deep. I thought about this all day today in my jet lag state, which didn't help. It's like a Wayne's World moment. Whoa, dude. God created creativity. Colossians 1:15. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, thrones, dominions, rulers, authorities. Again, all things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things, and he actually holds them together. We see this same exact phrase from a different author in John 1:3. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, he was in the beginning with God. That's not confusing at all. All things were made through him, and without him not anything that was made was made. So these texts are saying that God made everything. So did he make Play-Doh? Did he make beef jerky? How does that work? But it says he made everything, and he holds everything together. It's the adjacent possible. When he said let is happening. And you are the creative force of a creative God. God created creativity and handed it to you. That's how beef jerky gets made. I must be hungry, I don't know. I had a lot of soy and rice. I may never eat sushi again. I'm thinking about beef jerky and stuff. Five Guys. You are the creative force that God hands creation to, and that's how the things happen, because he never lets it stop. He spoke it forth. He said, do your thing, and I'll hold it all together. Anything we make is from the adjacent possible of God's creation. God created creativity, and he invited us into that invention. It's a stream. He threw us in that stream, planted by that water, and he's constantly looking for us to make the thing that we're supposed to make and not the thing that will make us liked. It is not ours to own. We cannot own creativity. It is his, and he invites us in. And again, that takes a lot of pressure off. It's not about you, because you don't own it. Right? In 2009, at 1 a.m. in the morning, in a basement in Grandview, I had a complete nuclear meltdown. I was soldering a circuit board to a distortion pedal, Justin. It's a box that makes noises. I was soldering in the basement, and I had started this business with no knowledge of how business works, and was just so in over my head. I had orders that were 6 months behind. I was trying to employ people. It was insane. I had no idea what I was doing. And I had this meltdown, and I remember saying, I have to be made for more than this. Soldering? How can God ever use me like this, like he used me in ministry? And I was tortured with this. How many people have felt this? How many came from this thing? I almost went down to the floor just from having PTSD. But how many have had that feeling of you're important and impacting ministry when you're on a stage preaching or leading worship? Nobody's really excited about that. Justin is. Justin's like, I'm there every day. So I had a revelation. If Jesus makes all things, then he made guitar pedals. Well, he let me make them, and he let the person invent them in 1962. And then the other person in 65 and 67 and 68 and 69 and 70s, and he let the 80s happen. Guitar players know what I'm talking about. He let chorus happen, Zane. God allowed chorus. I don't know who the guitar player was tonight, but he's amazing. I knew the whole band. He had the best chorus tone in this one part. It was so good. God made all things, not some. And he holds all things, not some. He holds the stinking guitar pedal circuit that was in my hand in a bigger plan of an adjacent possible to impact the world, and I don't have to be preaching or leading worship. What is your problem that you're facing? What are you hung up on? What's your burn? What's the thing you thought you were going to be doing, but you feel this little desire in your heart, and it's weird, and you're going to look weird doing it, and you're not going to be comfortable, and you're going to have to figure out business. What's the itch? What's the thing? Someone in here has the same feeling. All things, guitar pedals, movies, books, toys, clothes, recipes, not some things, all things. Maybe you like making donuts. Guess what? People who walk into a donut shop that won't step foot in here. I sell guitar pedals to people that say they're Satanists. I've yet to meet a real Satanist. They're usually just really sad people. I'm being serious. What is the thing that's in you that you're scared of because this is so comfortable? And you've been told your whole life because you're from America that ministry looks this way. Well, it doesn't really look this way. And I just want to say this. I've reserved this and I've decided to say it. There is a term called marketplace Christianity that drives me crazy. I am not, if you like the term, it's fine. I just want to say this. Marketplace Christianity is basic Christianity. We never needed to make a confusing theology around having normal jobs as Christians. We're called to work, and in that work, we impact our world. I understand the sentiment. Marketplace Christianity is just Christianity. If you feel bad about having a job, that is a straight up lie from the devil. The impact on this world and the taking back of the imagination of people comes from us in the world, but not of the world, doing the thing that God's put in our heart through this adjacent possibility and creating the new creations that captivate people's attention. Whether that's a guitar pedal, mixing a record, making a donut, I don't care. Marketplace Christianity should be defined as this: Christianity. That's just a hindrance, and it drives me crazy. And I understand it, and there's some really nice people that go to town on that. But man, to me, that's so damaging. You do not separate work and faith. It just doesn't, that's not how God designed it. As followers of Christ, we can give real lasting value to that starving world. Number 4, still taking notes? Okay. Creativity needs collaboration and community. Creativity needs collaboration and community. Again, this lone genius thing is ridiculous. Show me any invention ever made, and I'll show you a story of a community and a collaborative effort. The lone thing is so dumb. When you meet someone, by the way, and they are real hung up on the thing was their idea and they did it, that is a sign that they do not understand how reality works. God uses community and collaboration to cultivate ideas. People that do, and especially in the church, this is my idea, that was my idea. Okay, cool. It's God holds everything together. We read it in Colossians. He made all things. You're just part of a stream. Okay? C.S. Lewis was once asked if he had ever influenced Tolkien. Everyone knows who Tolkien is? Tolkien. My Alabama came out. And he laughed. You might as well try and influence a Bandersnatch, he said. A Bandersnatch is this whimsical, irritable monster from Through the Looking Glass. Anyone familiar? You probably know a Bandersnatch. If anyone was a lone genius, I would say it was Tolkien. I mean, the dude, Lord of the Rings, come on. Extended edition, anybody? Like, you got Lord of the Rings and then like 7 different things about Lord of the Rings, and you got books about the languages and mythologies, maps. Who has time to make maps? I don't even know how to get across 435, and the guy is making maps of like side Earth. This guy's a lone genius. So here's the deal, though. So C.S. Lewis is asked this in an interview because they're both at Oxford. And he says, there's no way. That's like, ain't gonna happen. you don't influence him. Well, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were part of a group called the Inklings. They met at this pub called Eagle and Child. I got to walk in there a few years ago, and it was like one of those nerdy moments where I just stood there like, yeah. I don't know what I'm doing here, but yeah. Anyone do this? We go to historical sites, and we're like trying to absorb some kind of transient force. I did it in Japan. In Japan, I'm like, this is where this circuit was designed. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, I think there is a connect with places. I don't understand it. I'm just admitting the silliness of it. So the Inklings were 19 men who met 1 to 2 times per week for 17 years. They shared stories, ideas, and they challenged each other. And after the unexpected success of The Hobbit, Tolkien gets stuck on a work he was calling The New Hobbit. Horrible name. He said to C.S. Lewis, he goes, they're at the pub, he goes, I don't know what to do. I think I'm done. He's super discouraged. And C.S. Lewis just says in passing, like your buddy would say, the problem is that hobbits are only interesting when they're in un-hobbit-like situations. And that was all he had to say. Within a couple months, The Lord of the Rings was rolling, and this single passing comment from another creative spurred one of the greatest literary works ever written. Diana Gleyers, she's a Tolkien historian. I'd love to meet her. I think I'm nerdy. She believes that 92% of Lord of the Rings was written on Wednesday nights because Tolkien knew that on Thursdays he had to go before that group of Inklings and tell them his work. And she shows it. Community and collaboration creates creativity. Creativity thrives in a community. The lone creative is the unproductive creative. Show me your lone, struggling genius making his music in the basement. Zane's over there. Show me your writer who's just like, I'm renting a cabin and disappearing for 12 years. They're unproductive, I guarantee you. You know what I'm saying. How many have tried this lone genius thing? You're going to go do something, and something's going to happen, and then you're suddenly going to be done. Nope, it does not work. Because God created community, and creativity is a communal experience. John 2:3. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said, they have no wine. Jesus said to her, woman, what does this have to do with me? I love that phrase. Jesus is really sassy in this moment. I think it was like a blood sugar thing. Right, like he's been walking, he's at a wedding, he's doing like intermittent fasting, and he's like, I'm a little grumpy. Woman, I don't know. If I said that to my mom, I'd be on the floor. My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Jesus' first creative miracle as a man was spurred on by his mother. Jesus himself had to be nodded along, pushed along. Is that not a little wild? Great work does not happen in a vacuum. We need co-conspirators all around us. Even in Genesis 1, what do we see? The collaboration of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Remember Edison in that list? He had a team. You've heard of Steve Jobs. Everyone thinks Steve Jobs made everything. Steve Jobs was really brilliant, but he had a huge team. And he borrowed from the adjacent possible. He didn't invent the computer, he made it better, adjacent possible. He's thriving in a community. Edison was thriving in a community. Jesus thrived in a community. Why do you think he had disciples? I don't know all the stuff they talked about. We know that the books would fill, what's the verse? What is the verse? Yeah, it would be a lot of books. It would be impossible to document it all. Every successful creative has collaborators without exception. I've experienced this in my career. I've collaborated with huge artists, huge companies, and that collaboration makes me better in every single way. And so some of you in here need to collaborate. You've been on an island too long. You are not created to be on an island. Creativity is not an island sport. It is communal. You need a community. You need to collaborate. It's not about you, and it's not about if your idea is done by you. It's about if the idea is done. Stop getting hung up on my idea. I'm the one that did. Who cares? You are in a stream of God's adjacent possible for this world, just do stuff. And you'll do more stuff with people that are like-minded. So surround yourself with those. My fifth point. I'm doing pretty good on time, Justin. I thought I needed 4 hours. Creativity is supposed to be hard. Big revelation there for some people. Number 5, creativity is supposed to be hard. Shortcuts and overnight successes are an absolute lie. If you want to be a good photographer, take 1,000,000 bad photos. If you want to be a successful YouTuber, make a ton of videos to get 50 views and move on. If you want to be a renowned songwriter, write songs that no one will ever hear. I remember standing in an elevator with John Foreman, and we're talking about songwriting, and he says, I write like 3-4 songs a day. No one ever hears anything I write, really. He's like one of the most prolific songwriters I've ever known. He just writes all the time because he's just writing for that adjacent possible. He's writing for the creative act and not the like. That's what we got to do. Creativity is really hard work. So here's a tip from my career. Learn to love the process more than the product. If you love the product more, you will never be satisfied. If you love the process, you will always have fun. Commit to learning over making a great product. Everything you fail at is a way to get better at the next thing. Learn to love the process more than the product. If you do this, failure becomes fun. I promise you, I actually love failing because I tried. So many people just say, I got a great idea. I'm going to take it on Shark Tank. I got this thing, man. It's going to blow up. Where's it at, man? It's so good. That's the end of their creativity. You never see them on Shark Tank. How does some of that stuff get on Shark Tank? I want to go on Shark Tank. That's my confession to you. So love the process more than the product. Here's some biblical examples of hard work and creativity. The tabernacle. Like, who gets a basic understanding of what it was like to create the tabernacle? All the commandments, the dimensions. Raise your hand if you get the gist of this. That's insane. But yet, here's what we do. We're like, man, I need to sleep in and like, I'm going to start this thing. I don't know. Like, I'm not feeling it. Oh, man, hold on. Maybe if I do some yoga, I'll be like inspired. No, just get up and build the stinking tabernacle. That's what they did. Creativity is just hard work. And nobody even saw some of the tabernacle. Do you understand how crazy this is? Meticulous detail in every way, and then the common person never even saw the inside. That is bonkers. Noah's Ark. He literally got 0 followers. I'm here all week. Like, the dude created the most stinking amazing thing, and his family's like, we're in. How many's, like, here's the truth. I could get into NASCAR driving, and my mom would be like, you're a hero. I could do anything, and my mom thinks I'm amazing. He got 0 followers, literally. The ark is intense. There's a play about it. You should look it up, right? It's a little dark. It's the darkest work of these two. The New Jerusalem is such a standard. Think about the New Jerusalem and how crazy detailed and beautiful that's going to be. The new heaven and the new earth. That's what we create towards. We create these things towards eternity, and eternity is beautiful and extravagant, and beauty and extravagance requires hard work. If you are a creative and you lack discipline, I encourage you to be disciplined. There is no shortcut. You will not feel different tomorrow. You will not feel different the next day. You will not feel different the next day. You will continue to not do the thing that God put in your heart because, quite frankly and candidly, you're undisciplined. The biblical standard of creativity is extremely hard work with no shortcuts and no praise. And that's how you know you're doing it right. And that's the thing that captures the imagination of a people and a world that are full from content but starving for art. Do you hear me? Hard work is irreplaceable. There's no drive-through version of mastering your skill. Whatever your skill is, think about it right now. You got to get better. We love these fun Christianese things like, let's impact the world. Let's change the world. And you're not even working on your craft. How do you expect to impact anything? The world's so much better than us in most every regard, quite frankly. It's depressing because we don't work at it. We expect like the Holy Spirit to come down and rain upon us this imaginative perfection of our mastery of skill. That's not how it works. And then we complain because you see some movie and you're like, my gosh, that's horrible. Christian movies are like, that's what happens. Or that album, oh man, that's embarrassing. You have to work at your skill. Zero shortcuts. We are supposed to make physical things that matter and that last. Content disappears almost immediately. Scroll down, forget. Scroll down, forget. 3.5 waking years of an average human's life is scrolling down and forgetting. But creativity pauses the narrative and makes something great that is forced to be looked at. You have to look at it. You have to stare at true creativity. So I want to close on this. There's this book that my wife has. She used to do this monologue. I should invite you up to do the monologue. No, I'm just embarrassing her. There's this book about cathedrals. It's really beautiful. And so I've been to a few. We went to a cathedral in Iceland, Spain. I've been in England one. They're crazy. You go. Who's been in like a big cathedral? Like just the gaudy kind of like, what is this thing, cathedral? It is such an impressive feeling. There's this reverence and there's this beauty that is so hard to explain when you're standing in it. And here's the crazy thing in this book. You flip through these famous cathedrals, and it'll say, creators unknown. There are people that gave their entire lives for work that they never saw finished, and they continue to be unknown, and yet I walk in the door and stand in awe. That is art. Not the scroll. The scroll is nothing. These cathedrals, a beautiful painting, a well-made album, a movie that grips you, a book that takes you from the first to the last page and you don't know what happened, a device that changes the sound of a guitar in a cool way. Beautiful art is what we need. There's a story that someone came to visit a cathedral and they saw a workman carving this tiny bird inside of a beam. And they said, why are you working so hard on something that'll be covered up by a beam on the roof? No one's ever going to see it. And this unknown workman says, because God sees it. These people made great sacrifices with no credit. They showed up to a job they would never see finished, knowing their name would never be on it. And one writer says that no cathedrals will ever be built today because there are so few people who will sacrifice to that degree. And that's our problem. So content's number one motive in closing is to be seen. Content says, look at me. And I'm not demonizing, I make content. Make sure it's your sawdust. Creatives, the creative motive is the unseen urge to connect with our Creator through that art of creating. It's a humble, faceless creativity, and content is a look at me creativity. So we're called to create great things and change the world. So here's my 3 questions for you. And if one of the 7 people that can play piano here, literally, Eric comes out, and I forget everyone plays piano. I also love that Justin's standing there fully capable of playing piano. Here's my 3 questions for you. See, it's just another person. There's like a room back there. It says like, insert a coin, and right? And a piano player walks out. Here are my 3 questions for you in closing. So again, content versus creativity. There's a war. People are full but starving. And here are the three questions for you tonight. What are you spending your time on? What are you doing with your influence on this earth? And then this one's important, and I want us to think about these for a moment. I'll read them again. Here's the third one. What have you been tricked into doing as a creator? Have you made content or a creation? So I'll read them one more time. I want to actually, let it be a moment of prayer. Open eyes, closed eyes, doesn't matter. God's here. I want us to have a moment here, 1 minute, 60-second meditation on these questions. What are you spending your time on? What are you doing with your influence on this earth? The adjacent possibilities that God's put in front of you. And then what have you been tricked into doing as a creator? Have you sold out for content, or are you determined to create a creation? Content is disposable. Creations are eternal. And content's fine. I'm going to make some Monday. But it's not the main thing. We're not called to do that. We're called to use it for sure, but creation, creativity, all things are made by him and for him. To jump into that continuation of let, to create, to build tabernacles and sanctuaries and arks. Some of you in this room, you're called to build the thing that won't get a single like. And that's the exciting thing to build. Some of you are called to get 0 subscribers and yet change the world. So Jesus, I ask you tonight, on the first night of this conference about legacy, such a beautiful term, what are we leaving? Are we leaving a disposable, scrolling form of temporary creativity, or are we building great cathedrals? Are we painting great paintings? Are we writing great books? Are we making great albums? Are we dancing beautiful dances? Are we writing the best songs? Are we producing movies that last? What is the legacy that you want on this earth? Lord, I pray right now over every heart and soul that you reveal the adjacent possibles next to them, the things that they need to just look to their side and see. To give up the idea it's all about them, but to jump into that stream of creativity, to add on to the last person's idea, to build to the next idea, to let the other person build on their idea. That's how we get these cathedrals. One stone, another stone, the next person lays the next stone, and we build a great cathedral. Lord, we thank you for our gifts, our talents, our creativity, and most of all, we thank you that you hold all of this together. In your powerful name, amen.